Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another signature edition of Let's Get Small with Jeff Kassel and my regular co-host, Steve Valancourt.
Just a little warning, Jeff. I'm a little punchy today. I didn't sleep last night. Watched those miners in West Virginia. Spent all day at the State House. I'm a little punchy. So be careful what you say or I'll knock you out.
Yeah, Steve Valancourt sometimes gets
punchy.
A little irrationally exuberant.
Well, if you had to sit through the State House like I did today when it was the most tumultuous session I can remember with Democrats and Republicans at each other's throats.
You are an important guy, Steve. And speaking of important, I'm gonna switch the agenda here because I know that I spoke to someone last night who said some very nice things about you. Of course, I corrected him, but he said some nice things about you as a legislator, and he said that you are helping him and his organization promote a certain piece of legislation about car inspections. They want car inspections to be less often in this state and well, actually, probably a little bit more expensive. Maybe you can explain something about this.
Well, you know, New Hampshire has 400 state reps, so we're very close to the people, and when the people call, I will take a call from just about anybody, not necessarily in my ward, but I got a call from somebody who I consider a constituent, although not directly in my ward, another Manchester ward. And he asked me if I would consider putting a piece of legislation in that would mandate that car inspections happen only every other year rather than every year. So I said, no, it sounds like a good idea to me. Maybe we don't need them at all, although I suppose there's nothing worse than having somebody break down in front of you because they have a bad transmission or muffler or something. So I guess maybe we should have car inspections. But I think every other year would be good. Did a little research on it. Got some information that many states in the country do it every other year. Some don't even do it at all. So I think it would be less onerous on an already overburdened public to have their car inspected every other year rather than every year. So I did file that legislation.
Now that the constituent that asked you, the citizen of Manchester asked you to do that, his name is Keith Murphy.
Well, I don't know if he wants it revealed, but
well, I mean, it's not exactly a subversive thing.
And apparently, I got an email from him after the bill was filed. You know how when we have fees in New Hampshire, like a fee would be to have your car inspected, to get your license, it's supposed to be a fee. It's not supposed to be a tax. A tax is something to raise money. A fee is something that is supposed to be used to cover the cost of instituting the service. So your auto inspection fee to the state should only be the cost of doing it, the state to run the paperwork. But we got a fiscal note attached to the bill that they would lose something like $3 million because they would only get to charge the fee once every 2 years instead of once every year.
So what was Keith Murphy's plan then to?
Well, he said the way to overcome this fiscal note with the state losing the money would be to double the charge, but you'd still only pay it every other year. So you'd be paying the same amount, but only still having to accomplish the task every other year.
We're talking about modest amount of money. It was actually
it's only about,
the state gets $2 or $2.50.
Yeah, of your car inspection fee, most of it goes to the automobile dealer, and now they have to do more and more checking of emissions and everything. But the state does get a little bit of that to apparently cover the cost of the paperwork.
Well, maybe you haven't been in New Hampshire long enough, Steve, but I remember a time when we used to have car inspections twice a year.
Oh, I remember that very well. I've been here since 1969.
Oh, you've been here longer than I have then.
I went to college in '69 at Plymouth State and never left New Hampshire.
Yeah, that was very, very disturbing to have to bring your car in. I've always been one of these guys that runs a car until it stops. So I tend to own very old cars. I'm driving around a 1988 Mercury Tracer now. Thing is almost 20 years old. And it does have a few problems, but it doesn't really compromise safety.
Well, it should be safety and inconvenience for other people. Like I had somebody kick a pebble onto my windshield last year, you know, when they go by you in the snow or something.
Right.
And there was this little crack across the bottom of the window. That was certainly not a safety hazard for anybody else, but I couldn't get my car inspected until I got that window fixed.
Well, this is the problem, really, with the whole inspection idea, because the people that are doing the inspections are the very same people that are going to be doing the car repairs. So they are not exactly disinterested inspectors.
No, but they do have to meet state guidelines. The state tells you what will pass inspection and what won't. The problem is that like in so many other things, government wants to be more and more big brother, so they're telling you they have to have your car do more and more good stuff for you, whether or not it's really necessary. Big brother is the word.
So you think repairing that windshield and replacing the windshield
totally not necessary. On the other hand, if my muffler was falling off, or my tires didn't have tread, that would be necessary. But that little crack in the windshield was no safety hazard whatsoever.
I remember once I went to a garage to have my car inspected, and the garage owner picked up a screwdriver and he said, "Well, let's look at the muffler." And he punched the screwdriver right through the muffler, and he said, "Well, this is a problem." And I mean, maybe it would have eventually broken anyway, but I mean, I really didn't like it. And you see, every now and then on 60 Minutes or one of these newsmaker type shows, they run a clip where, a car has a small problem. They actually create the problem and see if the car repair
Well, I
place
have
can
complete
find
confidence in my mechanics.
You do.
Well, I usually use my brother.
Yeah.
But that's one of the bills that will be going. I think it's going to be in the Transportation Committee. Most of the bills that have been filed have already been scheduled for public hearings in January and February. So you can go to your state legislative website and find out when the hearing for that bill is.
Now, have you heard anything about of course, nobody's talking about the spending cap proposal, which was disqualified by the Attorney General's office after we gathered the 5,100 signatures. But are you involved in Representative Biondo's effort to get the AG's office to rule in advance of doing all that work?
I'm not involved, but I know that he's filed that legislation, and I think it's a good idea. I mean, it's ridiculous to make somebody like you and your group go through all the work of collecting those signatures and then over a technicality rule that you don't have what you need there. So I think whatever the legislation is something that should be looked upon favorably. But I got to tell you that a lot of these bills that you and I think are good ideas, when you get 400 of those meddlesome House members, they vote no on far too many good ideas.
Well, in this case, it's really about democracy. Letting in many ways, when you have a legislature or when you have even 14 aldermen and an aldermanic board, they don't necessarily reflect the will of the people. The reason we went through all of that to have a spending cap was to control spending in this city, and the will of the people was subverted basically because there were some people in the AG's office and probably a lot of Democrats.
Orville, Budd, Fitch.
Well, who knows exactly what it is. They, if you remember, they said that we required a vote of 11 of the aldermen to override the spending cap. They said it should have been 10. It was ridiculous because an amendment to a city constitution is simply that. It's a change. We can decide what the nature of the supermajority is.
I think their argument, and I did attend the court session when Orville Budd Fish was arguing against your man there, Carl Beisel.
Carl Beisel.
And I think their argument was that the United States Constitution basically says one man, one vote. So one man, one vote means 50%. Yet on the very nature of the argument, it's absurd because to amend the U.S. Constitution requires not 50%, but 2/3. So the one man, one vote principle is thrown on its very head by saying you're trying to defend it.
Well, not only that, but up in Laconia, when the AG made the same objection, I think in Laconia they require a 5/6 supermajority to override the spending cap. The AG complained about it, and then the Board of Aldermen or the Town Councilman, whatever they call themselves.
It would be Alderman City, yeah, because they have...
They wrote it, and they said 5/6, that's what we want, and the AG's office didn't even
I thought they
intercede.
went down to 4/6.
No.
Well, that's because they're more user-friendly, apparently, up there. Another thing is down in Nashua, the will of the people was denied there. They had 3,100 or some odd signatures to recall the mayor, Bernie Streeter.
Yeah.
And some court has thrown out that, saying the recall...
Well, they said they didn't have the authority to actually mount the recall based on for the reasons that they said, that there are certain reasons for a recall, and that didn't qualify. I have no idea.
I didn't agree with that either. I think when you have bureaucrats, and I hate to sound like an anti-court person because I usually think the court is defending us, but when you have the court negating the will of the people, it's not necessarily a good thing.
Well, if the people, for example, in this city, if we had to vote on big projects or even on the budget, if there was some kind of computer system where you could actually vote, you didn't need to be represented, everybody votes on these things, you watch the town meeting on your TV.
Oh, I don't support that.
But let's assume that was the way it was, that the people could actually vote like in a town meeting.
You think
like
the turnout would be better?
I don't know if the turnout would be better, but in an issue that had to do with your real estate taxes, I bet the turnout would be quite good.
Well, you had an indication of how they would have voted on your spending cap when they had a small amount, a raise increase for the mayor's salary. It was only about, what, $25,000 from 68 up to 90,000 or something? Right. And they voted against that rather substantially. So I think the people have proven that if you give them the chance to vote, they're rather skinflints.
Yeah. I don't know.
But they vote for all these people who aren't.
Do you remember how close that vote was on the salary increase?
It wasn't close. It wasn't
like the...
It wasn't 60-40,
Yeah.
but it was like, I think 58-42. It wasn't a close vote.
So, I mean, people are really against... Now, what do you personally feel it's a bad idea to pay the mayor of the city more than $68,000?
Absolutely, because, a lot of people think, well, the mayor is doing all this work on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know me, I believe government should be doing less. So the less the mayor does, the better. Because when the mayor does more, he's thinking of more big spending projects, so we'll pay more taxes. I don't want the mayor doing a lot. Basically, government is established. It should be running itself. You need somebody to plow the streets and do all these services, but you don't need the mayor out there thinking 24/7 of ways to spend more money. So I think the mayor should receive less money and do less work.
Well, who's going to read to the children in the classroom?
Who's going to cut ribbons and all that stuff? Who's going to hog the camera on Dr. Disgrace's MCTV, which is still running the Christmas parade 15 times a day?
Yeah.
The mayor shouldn't be doing more, should be doing less. And I hope Frank Ginter, by the way, did you see the union leader today? They asked people to send suggestions in to save money, when I, in fact, sent 10 in the day after the election.
Now, did you send it to the union leader as well?
No, I sent it to Ginter the day after the election, remember? But now I see that now that the inauguration has occurred, the union leader is asking to send them suggestions to save money, which they'll send on to Ginter.
Well, Steve, did you go to the inauguration?
No, I missed the inauguration.
Yeah.
I was gone.
Just as I thought.
Weekend in Montreal, and I did get back, and I was home Monday, which was New Year's, and because of the Sunday holiday. And then for some reason, I thought the inauguration was Wednesday. But I don't want to use that as an excuse. I wouldn't have gone even if I had been aware that it was Tuesday. Because, frankly, I've told you, I don't like a lot of the big spending aldermen. I tried to become one of them, but I didn't want to be one of them if they all were still there. And I basically, as a New Year's resolution, shall we say, have tried to decide to not do things that are going to aggravate me. So seeing Hank Thibault, Dan O'Neill, Mike Lopez, Betsy DeVries, and the big spenders all get sworn in would probably drive my blood pressure up. So that, in a nutshell, is the truth about why I did not go to the inauguration. Did you go?
Yes, I did. Thank you for asking. I like to get a few words in
And
on
why
this
did
show.
you go, Doctor?
Well, I just kind of wanted to rub shoulders with the powers that be. I actually was kind of hoping to talk to Frank Ginter. I did kind of pigeonhole him at the reception table. They held it in the main fire station downtown, and there was some free food there. Of course, you paid for it.
I should have gone then.
And I had an eclair, and I had a little sandwich, and I tried to talk with Frank when he was getting a sandwich, but he told me he didn't have time, that he had some people he had to talk to. So, maybe at some point I'm going to get
Did he ask you to do lunch?
No, he didn't. Mayor Baines had said we should do lunch together, but unfortunately I never got that call.
I see there was a nice picture of Baines and Ginter together, smiling and joking today.
Baines looked kind of grim at that. They had, I think, 3 or 4 of the former mayors sitting on the stage, and Frank gave his little speech. And
how long was it?
I would say maybe 5 or 10 minutes.
Was it inspiring?
It wasn't burdensome. No, it was
uplifting.
It was
a new vision for the city.
It was replete with the usual political cliches.
Oh no, not that.
Let's talk about it for a minute. For example, this is what I took away from. Somebody asked me what was said, and I couldn't remember. But
this is a joke now, right? This is a parody.
For purposes, it's not a joke.
Oh.
For purposes of this program, I want to tell you what Frank said.
Well, I missed it, so I'm all ears.
Frank is going to cut taxes.
So I've heard.
Yeah.
And crime.
Frank is going to cut crime.
And schools.
Frank's going to improve schools.
Well, would that be
and
655 3?
Yeah. He did not use the number again. If you remember last week on this show, I said, Frank, never use those numbers again. 655 3. We don't want to talk about that because it could easily become, in the next 2 years, 888 3.
Well, apparently, even though he doesn't call you or talk to you, he does watch the show.
Well, of course he watches the show. Anyone watches this show. And, of course, your show, which broadcasts at 9:30 on Thursday nights.
We don't do shameless plugs here. It took us a little punchy today. I might poke you if you don't be careful.
Okay. Well, anyway, Frank thanked a lot of people at the inauguration. He didn't thank me. But
he should have thanked you.
He thanked all the people that supported him. And I actually gave Frank a few dollars, for his campaign. I went to one of his fundraisers. Frank did not give me any money. But I gave him a little bit. And I was actually, I think, and I wrote him a letter about this. I said I thought I was actually a pretty important guy in his campaign, not just because of the 600 or 700 votes that I got during the primary, which I released and endorsed him. But actually,
like indentured servants or something? I release you now.
We had 5,100 signatures, and I represented those spending cap people, and I encouraged them to vote for Frank Ginta because I had a dog in this hunt.
Now, if Frank had won by 3,000 votes, I would say that was insignificant. But the fact that he only won by 500 votes proves that what you did for him probably helped him win the election.
You know, not only that, but it wasn't just that, Steve. I don't know whether you remember, well, I'm sure you do remember, but the first time the whole educational thing came up about the failing schools, that came up during the debate, the primary debate.
On Channel 9.
That was the first time it came up. Remember, I was asked what I would do in the event of a catastrophe in the city, kind of like 9/11, and I said I had no idea. I said, but we have another kind of catastrophe that's going on in this town, and it's about the schools. Every single high school failed the No Child Left Behind adequacy tests, and Frank picked that right up. And you know what? Frank picked that spending cap proposal right up. He refused to sign it for 2 months. Then finally he signed it, and he put it next to his bosom, and it became the centerpiece of his campaign, the whole taxation thing.
So you're saying that Frank Ginta was little more than Jeff Kassel with charisma and $200,000?
No, I was the one that had the charisma.
He sold your ideas and used $200,000 to sell your platform.
Well, you know, I'm a giving person, Steve. I'm a giving person, and I gave Frank my campaign. It isn't a matter of me getting elected. That's really not what's important. What's important is that these ideas go forward. Whoever is wearing the mantle of leadership in this city.
That the ideas are going forward.
Yeah.
I don't have great confidence.
What are you trying
I understand
to say?
you did run into Dan O'Neill, though, during the inaugural.
Yeah, it almost turned into a shouting match.
Not with Dan O'Neill.
Yeah, Dan
Calm
O'Neill.
and cool Dan O'Neill?
I said, Dan, please, are you going to be leading this charge to lower taxes in this city? And Dan said, well, how many fire stations would you like to close, Jeff? I said, Dan, I'd like to close them all. And he said, you know, Jeff, you think you're funny, but you know, if there's a fire and your house is on fire, even your house, the fireman would put that fire out, you know?
I'm not going to tell you a story, but I have a very good friend whose house burnt down because of the incompetence of the Manchester Fire Department.
Well, these are wooden buildings. I mean, these are wooden buildings, let's face it. Most of these buildings burn almost virtually to the ground. But what people don't understand is the fire department has really embraced a whole new area of emergency activity, which is...
Getting people out of coal mines?
Well, not here. We don't have any coal mines here. But they go to people's houses and they take them to the hospital, right?
Oh, the ambulance service.
Yeah, you know, the response time because people have had a heart attack.
That costs a lot of money to do that, too.
Well, you know, I'll tell you what costs a lot of money. Those fire trucks cost a lot of money, and you know, we need a certain amount of fire stations in this city.
I don't think we need firemen serving as ambulance drivers.
Well, it's all part of the thing, you know. I mean,
it's all part of big government,
yeah.
Big brother government that we talk about.
Now,
so
not
much.
everybody does it this way. I'm not sure how effective it is. I mean, response time is important if you have a heart attack because you need a shot of some enzyme that's going to break up the clot in your veins before you have a lot of heart damage. But I mean, at what point do you say, listen, the response time has to go down even. I mean, do we put a fire station on every block to cut the response time?
Policeman on every street corner.
How many fire stations do we have in this town?
I don't know, 7 or 8? I don't know.
I think it's even more than that.
I've told you before that when I was in East Germany, they had a policeman in every street corner. You know, it was a communist country. They had...
It's a police state.
Yeah,
of course they have a police.
If you want to cut down on crime, have a policeman on every street corner. But do you want to live in a society like that? I don't.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind having some cops around, but I would object to the cost. And I mean, this is always the, when O'Neill told me they would even put the fire out in my house.
That was
Why wouldn't they put the fire out in my house? I pay $5,000 a year in taxes. I mean, isn't that enough?
Probably what you paid in taxes in the last 20 years is enough to rebuild your house if it burned down.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of costs borne by the city, and as we've mentioned so many times on this show, Mike Lopez seems to lead the charge for a lot of those programs, like the $25,000 to $35,000. There's Mike,
chairman of the board. Chairman of the board.
He will be.
Has he been elected? He was elected yesterday, wasn't he?
Oh, was there an all
right after the inauguration?
Yesterday? Well, I kind of missed it, but it's very disturbing, to see the way your money is being spent.
I cannot support it because it's not for all the people.
There's a complete disconnect. Now I want to veer onto another topic because at the inauguration, I ran into Jack Heath.
Conservative Jack Heath.
Jack Heath used to be the news director for Channel 9.
Ran for Congress against John Sununu.
I think he was also a sports commentator. Wasn't Jack Heath
Not that I remember. Yes? Well, maybe.
And I think he also was an anchor for a while, the news anchor.
Yeah, he used to do the close-up show.
Yeah. And he was actually quite good.
He was very good.
And
pretty bright guy.
He is a bright guy.
And when he ran for Congress, he did pretty well. He didn't win. Sununu beat Wazorek, and I think Heath came in third, and he was using that moniker, Conservative Jack Heath.
Yeah. Well, I guess he is kind of conservative because he wrote a piece in the Union Leader in the Hippo Press, and I really enjoyed it.
I did see it.
And he wrote about this concert that he went to for James Taylor.
Sweet baby James.
And he paid a lot of money to get into that concert, and I guess it was close to $400. This came out yesterday when I talked to him. And Jack said that he really resented the way James Taylor would attack Republican and conservative politicians. He said he even took a shot at Richard Nixon.
You mean in his songs or between songs?
Between songs, between songs, and Jack said, after spending all that money, he was getting more and more irate as the concert went on to find out all of his political heroes are being attacked by this guy who spent $400 to listen to his music. He didn't want to hear his political diatribe.
So I've seen fire and I've seen rain, and by the way, George Bush, you're a bum.
Richard Nixon sucks. No, I don't know what he said.
This is what it was?
I don't know what he said.
Well, that woman, Laura Ingraham, who was here in Manchester, divided by the Republicans a couple of years ago.
Right, Republicans first.
Republicans first. She wrote a book called Shut Up and Sing, in which her thesis was basically this: we don't care about you people if you're famous singers, and we don't care about your politics. And after you told me about this, I read it, and I read Pappas's op-ed piece, also in the Hippo, which you took the other point of view, and I thought a lot about this as I was actually driving around over the weekend. And I think probably I agree with Jack Heath. I think James Taylor has a right to free speech. Linda Ronstadt, also very liberal, gives her views.
It wasn't exactly free for Jack Heath. You paid $400,
But I mean, basically, you shouldn't have to subject people to things they don't want to hear. And Heath was claiming, Jack was claiming that they were a captive audience. And I guess if you pay $400 for a ticket, you're not really captive, like being in chains in Abu Ghraib prison or something. But I think probably entertainers should just shut up and sing. Well, from the right and the left.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree with you. But Jack, what really sealed it for him is his daughter had harassed him to buy one of the James Taylor T-shirts, which he spent, I think, about $30 for, and he was even more. He wanted to get a refund for that T-shirt after the concert.
Wait a minute. How old is his daughter?
I don't know.
And James Taylor isn't still that big now. I thought he was big in the 70s.
He's making a lot of money. Jack, in his article that he wrote the op-ed piece, he said there were 7,000 or 8,000 people there. But listen, I want to read to you a response that I wrote to Jack Heath because I was so taken by his article. And this is just an excerpt from my letter to him.
Is this the comedy bit?
No, this isn't comedy. This is deadly serious. Here's what I wrote to Jack Heath. I wish I had written what Jack Heath wrote. I need the camera on me, George. I wish I had written what Jack Heath wrote. I have to confess, I wanted to steal it and send it to the New York Times or the Washington Post under my name. But I guess I don't have much protest left in me. It wasn't always that way. I'm sure Jack wasn't walking around with long hair and beads back in the time James Taylor was really big back in the 1960s. I'll send a picture of myself around 1966 as I introduced Barry Goldwater to the student body at the University of Pennsylvania amid a hail of ripe tomatoes and human waste. Show the picture now, George, please.
That's what I looked like.
That's what I looked like in 1966 before the transformation.
Gypsies, tramps, and thieves.
Okay. Now, young Republicans, Jack, were not popular back then, and I'm sorry to say it was a time when SDS seemed to be promoting riots on a weekly basis in Philadelphia. I still have my old political button from 4 years later, and it said this: "Don't change dicks in the middle of a screw. Vote for Richard Nixon in '72."
Now, that was you that we saw there?
Yeah, it was.
Have we ever seen that before?
Can I finish this, please?
Oh.
I'm sure it will be worth a lot of money, that button for Richard Nixon, in the near future, but I will never sell it. I'm proud of Richard Nixon and everything he stood for. In case Jack is interested, I might be willing to make an even swap his $30 James Taylor T-shirt for a Jeff Kassel for Mayor shirt. I want to stress the Jeff Kassel T-shirt is a very limited edition with only a few hundred copies, unlike the James Taylor shirt.
So that was our comedy bit.
Thank you very much.
Now, are you telling me that you were a conservative when you were a young person?
I actually was. I was my first year in college. I was at Antioch College, and I was one of the few people on the college campus. That used to be the hotbed of free love and communism in Ohio. I was not exactly a popular figure there, and I worked in the Barry Goldwater campaign.
64. In your heart, you know he's right.
I don't know whether you remember, but back in 1964, there was a magazine called Fact Magazine, and there was a cover on Fact Magazine, 1,001 psychiatrists say that Barry Goldwater is nuts.
Were you the one?
Well, Barry Goldwater actually had a plan to end the Vietnam War.
Yeah, he was going to bomb Hanoi into the Stone Age.
Well, he did. Was Curtis LeMay his running mate?
No, that was Perot.
That was Perot? Well, anyway, Barry Goldwater came to become a revered figure in the Republican Party, and then the conservative wing of the Republican Party really went off the deep end.
Yeah, because Barry Goldwater refused to be a homophobe.
Yeah, but there were some other things, too. We'll get into that homophobe thing. Greg Salt's very upset, Steve, about some of the things you said about him on your show. Well, if the swastika fit, wears it. That's all I can say. If the swastika fit, wears it. You know my first association with Richard Nixon? No.
This is my first memory of politics. In 1960, I was like 8 years old. Nixon, of course, was running against Kennedy. I remember in Shoreham, Vermont, across from Ticonderoga, New York, in a school, 5-room schoolhouse.
We got 30 seconds
I was
here.
going around the playground saying, Nixon's so great. Not Nixon's one came later, but I was an 8-year-old rooter for Richard Nixon in 1960. Yeah. And I stayed up as late as I could watching him lose to JFK that year. Yeah. Brilliant story, huh? I didn't punch you.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Today.
Folks, in case you're interested, I still have some of those Jeff Kassel from Mayor T-shirts left, and I can sell them to you at a very attractive figure.
And I can dig up a 30-year-old picture of me, too.
Goodbye for Let's Get Small with Jeff Kassel and Steve Valancourt. See you next week.
We're supposed to shake hands.